Hi, Kimber Shook here, and welcome to my channel. I'm so thrilled you found me here on YouTube. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a faux cabin scene inside a styrofoam. And yes, that means no sewing. Right? Even though I like to sew. That's all right. But we're going to take scraps of fabric and tuck them inside a styrofoam to give the illusion of a quilted piece. Although I'm using my Skillshare class as my inspiration for this project here, you can still follow along and download the template I provide below. Or if you want to check out my Skillshare class, by all means, you can sign up with the link below for a free trial. Okay, here's some supplies that you need if you want to create this. Some scrap fabric, some glue, some yarn, markers, scissors, ruler, pencil, paper, manicure tool, and some pins along with a template. We also want to make sure we trim our styrofoam. I'm going to be working on a 14 by 11 inch piece of styrofoam. You can get this at craft stores. Before we proceed, we want to add some scrap paper to the back side. We're just going to trim up some scrap pieces of paper, make sure it measures the size of your styrofoam, and we are going to glue it on the back side. I'm laying out an old towel to protect my desk when I use the spray adhesive, but you can use other glue as well. Once I have the glue on the back side of my styrofoam, I can lay out my scrap pieces of paper and let it dry. If you're coming from my Skillshare class, Create a Faux Quilted Cabin Scene in Procreate, make sure you check out the link below on how to turn that artwork into a template. If you haven't taken my Skillshare class yet, that is not a problem. I provide a link below for a downloadable template that you can create for this class. So first, after you print out your template, we are going to trim it and we're going to tape it in place. Now we're going to cut out the different elements or sections. Now for this one, this is going to have a border, and I'm going to measure out a border all the way around about 1/2 inches for all sides. I just want to give my corners a bit of an angle, kind of like a frame would have. I'm going to pin my cutout pieces and trace around them. This will give me an idea of where I want my fabric pieces to go. And for my cabin, I'm going to cut out smaller pieces and trim those as well, just to give me a guide for placement. Now I'm going to start cutting out my fabric. I'm going to use yellow for the sun. And you don't want to cut out your pattern piece exactly to size. You want at least 1/4 inch or so. You can have that extra fabric and tuck it inside the styrofoam. And before we start tucking in our fabric, we want to outline your traced image by tapping and poking inside the styrofoam here and there, just to give your fabric an easier way to get tucked inside that groove. And I would recommend pinning your fabric to your styrofoam as you tuck it in. It kind of helps hold it in place. Now we're just going to continue this process by using our cut out template pieces and cutting out pieces of fabric. And we're going to do the same thing. First, we're going to poke the styrofoam before we start poking the fabric into the styrofoam. And we're just going to repeat this process. So if you have a shape with pointed edges, like this triangle for the tree, I would recommend snipping off those pointed edges because it does make it easier to tuck fabric, so you can snip off straight across those pointed edges. So the process for this particular project took probably 2.5 hours. I did want to shorten the video for this YouTube because the process is pretty much the same here on out. You may have to trim your fabric once you get part of it tucked inside the styrofoam. Sometimes it makes it easier. This way you know for sure how much fabric you need, and you can just trim off the excess that you know you won't need it. So I'm just taking sections of my cabin and using it as a pattern for my fabric. Sometimes I get a little bit overboard when I cut around my pattern. That's okay, I can trim it as I go. Again, I created this original idea in Procreate before I decided to create it into the real life piece of art that you're seeing created here. So the background, we're working in easy uniform shapes. I'm not measuring anything out, but I'm using the ruler as a guide to tap out a edge for my fabric, and I'm just cutting rectangle shapes and adjusting once I start getting it tucked in place. Pinning definitely does help as you tuck in. It kind of keeps it in place, and I'm trimming the corners where I don't need all that excess fabric, and I'm just repeating until I have my entire background filled. I'm doing up my frame. You can choose to use different fabrics. I'm using the same for the whole border because this fabric is amazing. So you can take this project and say it's almost complete because you got to finish up the backside, but I like to take it a step further, and I do this by adding some glue and tucking in additional yarn inside those valleys of those seams. This gives it a more cleaner look. I only want to work in small sections with the glue because otherwise I'm going to get glue all over my hands, and I'm just gluing out a line and tucking in that yarn. Not only will it keep the fabric from poking out, but it also gives it a little bit more sturdiness because of the glue inside that same area as well. So this way it'll hold up a little bit longer. And I'm snipping my yarn as I go. All I'm doing is doing the same thing, repeating until the entire piece is complete. Now we're going to finish this up, and we're going to flip it over, and we're going to take all that extra fabric and those strips of yarns that were from the side, and we are going to tape it up, glue it up. We're going to glue the sides and help hold it in place. So you can call this complete as is, or you can frame it. I like it just the way it is. So here is our original piece that we created in my Skillshare class that inspired me to create this in real life. So what do you think of this technique? I love incorporating some of my digital art into other mediums and turning it into a real life piece of art. Yes, I can take my digital art that I create inside of Procreate, get it printed, frame it, and hang it on the wall. I can do that. I love taking my digital art that I create and turning into other avenues of art that I can sell. So I can turn my digital art into something I can sell. I can turn pieces of the elements that I use and recreate other pieces of art, and then I can incorporate that digital art and turn it into a template to create other things. Not only can I sell the template, but I can create and sell the other things. And this is exactly what I want to be able to show you, because if you are like me, you are always thinking of different things to create, always thinking of different ways to create it, and how are you gonna make money? And that is big in today, at least in my world. I'm always thinking about how I can make extra money so I can pay those bills. So here I am. Here's my channel. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I want to hear your comments on how you loved this tutorial.